up? Back at it again, I am. Y'all can't get rid of me that quick. No, I'm just playing. It's your boy Hollywood AJ, back with another episode. You could also catch this podcast on Apple Podcast and wherever you stream your podcast. I am now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so you get more content. If you don't want to watch the video, you can catch the audio versions on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as this is great content you do not want to miss. I'm the only one putting out this great content, so you guys should know that, hey, I'm putting out some really cool, true shit, so you guys should really tune in from now on. But with the task at hand, let's get to the fights. There was a pay-per-view this past Saturday, UFC 274. I always do recaps. If you're new to this channel, I do recaps of the fight night, big fight pay-per-view that happened the week before. I do predictions as well, and I try and help y'all win some money with my picks. And that was the case with this last time. Although the last pay-per-view, I broke it up into sections, I feel like this is one pay-per-view card that I can just go in straight from head to toe and talk about it with you guys. I'm going to talk about the three big fights I predicted for. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, Joe Lozon. Of course, that didn't happen. That was one fight I was truly looking forward to seeing most. It didn't happen, but hey, maybe they'll rebook that fight in a few weeks and we'll get what we wanted. But let me get to the fight that everyone hated most. And I don't want to sound harsh or sexist or anything like that. I am all about women being in the UFC, but sometimes I'd say a good 90% of their fights are really hit or miss. Sure, women's fights gave us some of the most spectacular moments, not only in MMA, but UFC history as well. I mean, some of my favorite knockouts came from women fights. Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang. I mean, I'm all about them being in the UFC. But when they put them in the upper echelon of we're going to headline them, we're going to put them as the co-main event, like I said, it's really hit or miss. And I know it's like that with any fight, but it seems it's like that more with female fights. And this fight between Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza was a part of the miss category. I mean, let's not forget they had a rematch back in 2014. So in Carla's back pocket, she has that, hey, I defeated her. Sure, they were babies, but still, I have that over her head that I defeated her. Rose Namajunas, though, has all the confidence in the world when she is knowingly one of the most popular fighters in the world, and not only that, the UFC strawweight champion. But Rose has come up in the past as having some sort of mental issues, like, man, if we could do this any other night, I would do that. But tonight is just not the night. That was the case this past Saturday night. I feel like when Rose is truly locked in, focused, has that GOAT mentality, that mama mentality, whatever you want to call it, she is unstoppable. She mollywops females. The both Weili fights that she had that mentality. But this fight, I wouldn't say that she was mentally defeated, but it was almost as if, one, she thought that her own game plan was going to weather Carla's storm and get her a win. Two, her corner wasn't telling her all the right necessarily things that you need to tell a fighter. And three, she thinks that this is something different. Every fight is different. Of course it is. But she feels that, okay, I can beat Carla by doing just enough. And that ultimately became her demise in the octagon. I mean, Carla is a wrestler. She is not the Khabib Nurmagomedov of the women's strawweight division. That is Tatiana Suarez. But Carla has good wrestling to where it poses a lot of problems for her oppositions. This fight was, I wouldn't say a pick'em, but everyone thought Rose would win. A lot of people thought Rose would win, including myself. If you watched the show last time, I predicted Rose to win 4th round submission. She was going to get the ultimate get back. That did not happen. The first 2 rounds were so uneventful that Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier were talking this round about being an unprecedented 10-10 round. I mean, when has that ever happened? Probably never. Even in the worst fights in UFC history, let alone title fights, there has been a little more action than that was in Rose and Carla too. It was truly something odd to see. And that fight was just truly boring. Probably one of the most boring women's title fights in history due to the fact that there's a difference between Rose fighting cautious and calculated, then fighting scared. Rose was fighting scared. What Rose needed to do to fight cautious and calculated was use her length, use her range. She has outstanding kicks. She won the title back with a head kick knockout, going to the leg a few times, then wham, coming up high, knocking Weili out to the face. Her kicks are nasty. Her kicks are lethal. If she were to have kept Carla on the outside with her kicks, just a little teep kick, or even, I'll get to it later, a Michael Chandler front kick, that would have been more sufficeful for Rose. That would have been more of a game plan rather than her going to the corner and Pat Barry, her fiance, telling her, oh, you hear the boos? This is what we want. This is what we want. We want Carla to come at us. You do not want that, because at the end of the day, the criterion for a fighter to win a round, the last criteria for a fighter to win a round is octagon control. And you can argue Carla had more octagon control. It's as simple as that. Had Rose truly keep her on the end of the punches, like think about this. Go back to Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier is the decorated Olympic wrestler. Jon Jones, the long, lengthy striker. What did Jon Jones do? He made sure that Daniel Cormier was always on the end of his punches. Uses his jab, most of all, uses his kicks, uses his teep kicks. Whenever Cormier tried coming in, there was always something in his face. There was always something in his chest. There was always something at his leg. There was always something at his body. Something like that is what Rose could have done. She could have used her jab a lot more because she had the longer reach. Used the teep kicks to keep Carla off of her and just pick her apart from the outside. Rose's wrestling has gotten exponentially better. And if you go to the ground, I would have gave the ground advantage to Rose Namajunas. We saw in the 5th round, Rose got a takedown with relative ease. And I was thinking, why didn't she do that earlier? At least a takedown in each round. Regardless if Carla had both her shoulders on the mat, it still would have counted as a takedown, therefore equalizing Rose in points, her winning the belt. That's truly what she had to do. A takedown around plus keeping Carla on the end, being long and rangy, with kicks, with jabs, with straight punches, and she would have won with relative ease. Would have won by decision, unanimous decision. But instead, I wouldn't even say it was a robbery because Rose didn't do much, but Carla neither did much either. I think she had a takedown in round 3 or so. I'm not too sure. I'm really not too sure. But all I know is this fight should have been a draw. And there's not enough draws in MMA. The last draw in a title fight was Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. UFC 256, December 2021. So it's truly sad that there's not enough draws in MMA because this is one outcome where the fight should have been a draw and we would have had a third fight. Not many people would have been chomping at the bit to see this fight though, but we would have gotten more finality had there been a draw, and more questions would be raised rather than answers if there was a draw. So I just felt it should have been a draw. I don't even think Carla deserves to be the champ. I mean, I respect her for stepping foot in the octagon, but she didn't do enough. Rose didn't do enough. The judges fucked up in the sense that this fight should have been a draw. Plain and simple. Now let's move on to my favorite fight on that entire card. The real co-main event, the people's main event, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson. As I mentioned in my last podcast episode, this was a fight that had a lot on the line for both men due to the fact that they both needed a win. Just like that, they both needed a win because Tony Ferguson lost 3 in a row. He lost 3 in a row, not to just scrubs. He lost 3 in a row to the upper echelon of the division. Justin Gaethje, who became the interim champion, fought for the title this past weekend. Charles Oliveira, the champion, who is an absolute badass. Losing to him is nothing to hang your head about. Beneil Dariush, who's been in the UFC for quite a while, but is making that leap. He's on the come up, you can say, even though he's been in the UFC for a while. So he's lost to 3 decorated guys that you can't hang your head about. And it's not like Tony got mollywopped. I mean, he did on the scorecard, but it wasn't like it wasn't an incompetitive outcome. It was a competitive, dominant decision victory, if you get what I'm saying. Whereas Michael Chandler made a big splash coming into the UFC back at UFC 257, defeating Dan Hooker, fighting for the title in his second UFC fight. Against Charles Oliveira, got knocked out 19 seconds into round 2. Then had a fight of the year, perhaps fight of the decade so far, with Justin Gaethje in what was one of my all-time favorite fights, 3-round fights of all time. So both of these guys, it's weird because they've been losing, but they've been losing to the best. And they are still considered as one of the best. Round 1 was entertaining. Michael Chandler got dropped. When I was watching it in real time, I thought it was a slip. But no, Tony Ferguson landed a great left hand, was doing good on the feet that he made Michael Chandler do an amazing level change, beautiful takedown to where Michael Chandler was doing some work on the ground on Tony Ferguson. Landing elbows, Ferguson was trying for submissions, and I got a little scared because, yeah, Tony Ferguson is a wizard on the ground. He is Doctor Strange on the ground, throwing up submissions from all angles, all situations. He won the interim belt from Kevin Lee with a triangle choke. His submissions are nothing to be messed with down there, which is why I was a little scared for Michael Chandler, but I thought he stole the round with that takedown. Ferguson won the first part. Chandler won the last part of it with that takedown and did a little bit of damage on the ground. Then we all know what happened. The kick heard around the world. The most viral knockout of the year so far. One of the craziest front kick KOs ever. The 9th front kick KO in UFC history. I mean, that kick knocked Tony Ferguson out so bad that it rattled his ancestors. I am not playing around with you. That isn't what did. Why am I talking like the Joker? I don't know. But, man, that was bad. It was like Michael Chandler kicked a 50-yard field goal. That's how much force he had on that kick. And look at Ferguson's face in this picture. It's just like, look at that. That is just insane. One of the craziest, greatest knockouts you will ever see. And when that happened, I immediately thought back to Anderson Silva versus Vitor Belfort. I immediately thought back to Lyoto Machida versus Randy Couture. How their front kicks didn't knock out their guys. They dropped them, and they still had to capitalize on the ground and finish the fight. But this knocked Ferguson out cold so bad that man. That's all you can say. That is all you can say. That Michael Chandler, every fight that he's been in is not boring. It's either been a finish or just a viral knockout. It's been meme season for Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson. What's next for both those guys? I would have to say Tony needs to take some time off after that knockout because that is bad. He probably definitely has the concussion. And, he's definitely not done. As I mentioned earlier, he's lost to the best in the division. Michael Chandler fought for the title a year ago. So it's not like Tony got knocked out by an unranked, unnamed guy. No, he's losing to the best. But he needs to take a year off. And I think the perfect guy for him to fight is Conor McGregor. And I'm not just saying that because it's a perfect fight for Conor, but it's a perfect fight for both men in the sense that, like this fight, they both need a win. And I think it's truly insane and special that, all the stars are kind of aligning for Tony and Conor to fight. By the time Tony heals up from that knockout, Conor will be healed up from his leg, and then we might get the fight we've been wanting to have for the past almost 4 years. Now, I know Conor's looking beefy. He's looking juicy. He wants to fight at 170. I think 155, though, is where he could get the belt back in the sense that there's just better matchups for him down at 155. Michael Chandler called out Conor McGregor himself, and that's a good fight. But Conor still has some healing to do. And I know for a fact Michael Chandler is not going to be the type to sit on the sidelines and just wait for something to happen. We have a bit of a conundrum, which I'll get to later. But there's a lot of options for Michael Chandler. I've heard Nate Diaz threw his hat in the mix to fight Michael Chandler. That's a big payday for Michael. He says his weight cut is getting harder and harder as he's getting older. His body is not deteriorating, but as you get older, the stuff that you could do in your 20s ain't as easy as you can do in your mid to late 30s. So I wouldn't mind a welterweight matchup between Nate Diaz and Michael Chandler. I even wouldn't mind a Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. That is a great number one contender fight because Dustin Poirier is still ranked pretty high. He's ranked number 3. Michael Chandler, I'd imagine, would be ranked number 4 after that knockout. Why not book that fight? Let's have some fun. That'd be an amazing fight. That could be a 5-rounder on a pay-per-view. So there you have it for that fight. I think Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson is the fight for both those guys. And I say you book Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier. That's a fight that no one's talking about. It's a fight I'm talking about. So I think people should start listening to me because I'm the one that has the best matchups and the best scenarios for fighters. Let's move into the main event. There was controversy surrounding this. Charles Oliveira missed weight, but not by a significant margin. He missed it by 0.5, half a pound. Whereas there was controversy in the sense like, man, should they give him this pound? Should we strip his belt? Should we just, totally forget about it? I believe that if there was a different commission in play, if the UFC was in Florida or Vegas, they would have let him fight. They would have said, oh yeah, he's on weight. Good enough. Good. Title fight's still on. But no, he missed that pound. The commission wasn't going to let it go. The UFC was forced to vacate the belt from Charles. Now, this is only the first time that a champion has missed weight. The rest has been challengers. I mean, you look at Travis Lutter, Anderson Silva. Travis Lutter was a challenger. You look at Yoel Romero, Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker was a champion. Yoel was a challenger. And then you look at just Joe Riggs, Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes was a champion. Joe Riggs was a challenger. This is the first time where a champion missed weight, and unprecedented the day before a very big fight, they take his belt away. So that meant that only Justin Gaethje was available to win the title. And I said this on one of my YouTube shorts that the pressure only mounted more on Justin Gaethje with that announcement. If there wasn't any more pressure added to this fight, there it was. If you lose, not only that, this was probably Justin Gaethje's last chance at a title. Last chance. He's pretty long in the tooth, takes a lot of damage. I say we have Justin Gaethje around the sport for a solid 3 more years. A lot can change. He still has a chance, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, it's not looking pretty for Justin Gaethje. Charles forfeited, and when the bell rung, it was going to be a simple fight unless you were Justin Gaethje. Charles Oliveira, I said this also on my shorts, one of two things can happen to him. It's as bleak as this. One, this could motivate him to shut up all the doubters, shut up all the haters, and say, hey, I am still the UFC lightweight champion. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I'm going to go out there and completely walk Gaethje like a dog. That is what I'm going to do. And just because you took the belt away from me doesn't mean that I'm not the champion, because I am. Or he could have succumbed to the pressure. He could have been like, man, why am I fighting if I'm not even fighting for a belt? I'm just going to go out there and not throw the fight, but not fight as hard as I would have if I had the belt on the line. So it was as bleak as that. What we got, though, was one of the best performances that Charles Oliveira has produced inside the UFC's octagon. I mean, just look at it. Gaethje hurt him. And I know I picked Gaethje, but that was kind of reverse psychology. Because I knew if Justin Gaethje could not beat a Khabib Nurmagomedov that had a broken foot and measles, there's no way on God's green earth he will ever win a title in the UFC. That's just a fact. Now, Charles came out and said, I want to stand with Justin Gaethje. And that raised my eyebrows because Justin Gaethje has power. And when I talked about him fighting Khabib, I'm like, yeah, he's going to do good because Khabib don't have a chin. And he could knock out Khabib if he just touches him once. And I thought, all right, Gaethje will win this belt because of his power. He relied too much on that. I think Justin Gaethje fans rely too much on his power to get it done. And so they just were ultimately disappointed in the end. He dropped Charles Oliveira twice. And watching that fight and watching it again here a few minutes ago, I thought, man, Charles is about 1 or 2 clean shots away from being put out cold. Because that's what you have to do to this man. If you just drop him and you let him up, he's not going to give up. Something truly shifted in Charles Oliveira when he started his win streak 5 years ago. He hasn't lost since 2017. Truly something special, and a truly highest of highs that this man has ever hit. I mean, I applaud him. I'm putting all the respect in the world on his name because he proved he is a bad mamma jamma. That guy is just truly something special and deserves to be the champion. He's a champion for a reason. He got dropped twice, got up. Justin Gaethje was throwing everything he had in his left hooks, right hooks, leg kicks. Ultimately, though, he was too wild. Charles is very technical in his striking, was able to land a straight right hand down the pipe, and immediately some fighters would jump on Justin with punches. Charles goes to his bread and butter, which is jiu-jitsu, and immediately tries a triangle armbar. That doesn't work. He lets Justin get up. He rides him, for lack of a better term, and sinks in a rear naked choke that you, me, or God ain't getting out of. Justin tapped, and I put all the respect in the world on Charles Oliveira's name. That guy is bad. He's a badass, plain and simple. I mean, Justin Gaethje, he's a fighter's fighter. He's entertaining. He's wild. He's fun to watch. He's nice in interviews. But being a fighter's fighter was ultimately his own demise. Ultimately, that didn't get the job done. He hurt Charles, but instead of staying technical, using combinations, which is what dropped Charles, he got wild. He started fighting. And that's not championship fighting. That's street baller fighting. That'll gain you a lot of fans on Instagram. That'll get you on the Nelk Boys podcast, but it ain't going to win you the title. And at the end, that is the fighter's ultimate goal. So I think now, I'm not saying Justin Gaethje is overrated, but I think now we can look at Justin Gaethje as one of those fighters that is really, really good, but will never win a title. Uriah Faber was one of those. Dustin Poirier could be on that list. Derek Lewis could be on that list. Joseph Benavidez. Many, many fighters. Bigfoot Silva. Just a who's who. Alistair Overeem. I mean, Anthony Pettis won the belt, but you get the idea. You get the idea. He is one of those fighters that wins every other fight he can except the big one. I knew the moment was going to be too big for him, and I knew, like I said, if he could not defeat a Khabib Nurmagomedov with a broken foot and measles, he is not defeating a 100% Charles Oliveira. And even in this fight, the cards were stacked in his favor. With Oliveira missing weight, the betting lines even shifted a bit, not much, but a bit. Drake lost $500K betting on Justin Gaethje. He just don't have it in him. He fights another Joe Schmo, he's the best fighter on the planet. But when he fights the champions and the guys that we think are going to give him a fight, or guys that we think Justin Gaethje can beat, he gets smacked. He loses. So he just don't have that in him. He don't have that dog in him. And I really hate to say that. I'm not going to go as far as to overrate him like I overrated Volkanovski and the Korean Zombie. But yeah, Justin Gaethje he don't have it in him. And tough night for Trevor Whitman. I mean, going from last year's Coach of the Year to this year being almost totally beltless. I know you still have Kamaru Usman, but his training camps are in Florida, Texas, Denver. I mean, he's bouncing around from gyms here and there, but you're kind of beltless without him there. So it just sucks. It sucks how Trevor Whitman is such a wizard in breaking down fighters, and he couldn't see what he had to do against Charles. I know when you're in there, it's you against you. And that was Justin's demise. So truly something crazy that I couldn't foresee coming. What's next for both of them? I don't know what's next for Gaethje. I wish he would be man enough to face the music, face the media, and have a post-fight press conference. But instead, we probably won't hear from him for another year like when he fought Khabib. And that's what I don't like about him. Whereas Conor, he'll face the music. He'll tell you what's next, win or lose. A lot of other fighters do the same. Dustin Poirier, who's who of fighters. Daniel Cormier, Chris Weidman, all those guys. Charles Oliveira, though, he's going to be fighting for a belt. He's going to be fighting for a belt. I would say if the fight was closer, book a rematch. But Charles smacked Justin that bad where we don't want to really see this fight again until Charles has the belt back, per se, and can truly make weight. We know Charles can make the weight. He's done it millions of times. I think Islam is next. And even though he hasn't beat anyone inside the top 10. That's just who's next. I mean, this will be a true make or break fight for Islam. We'll see where he's at, if he's real or is he fake. Is he just another coming of Khabib, or is he just one of those guys that what could have been? I think Islam's the next move. You know, you got Beneil Dariush in there. Beneil versus Michael Chandler is a great fight. Beneil versus Islam is a great fight. I wish Beneil did not get hurt so that way we could have more finality and more clarity as to who is next for the title. That's why we're in a bit of a conundrum, because you have Islam, because you have Dustin Poirier, even though he just lost, because you have Michael Chandler, because you have Beneil Dariush. You have a murderer's row of guys that can step in and fight Charles. Does that mean they're going to win? Anything can happen on a given night. But you guys get what I'm saying. It's truly different when it comes to Charles Oliveira kind of cleaning out the division. He hasn't fought Islam, hasn't fought Benny, and that fight with Michael Chandler, I'm pretty sure we all would want to see again. Michael Chandler, I think, is one win away from another title shot. Beneil is there. Islam is there, but, you know, I think that fight has to happen. I say you book that fight for International Fight Week between Islam and Benny, and then the winner fights Charles in the late fall, early winter. Just like that. Boom. I mean, Charles even called out Conor McGregor. The champ can do what the champ wants to do, and if he wants to fight Conor, which is a huge payday for any man, he can do so. And in the process, Conor can get a belt. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the division, who's going to fight who's going to get the title shot. And no matter what's going to happen, I think we're all going to be satisfied with the results, whether it be Islam or Benny or Michael Chandler. The reason why I want it to be Islam is obviously because Khabib is retired. And this, with Oliveira's victory, it makes me wish Khabib was still fighting. I wish he didn't run away. But still, it makes me think that, man, Oliveira could have really beat Khabib. He really could have. Now we get Islam. If he beats Islam, does that mean he technically beat Khabib because Islam and Khabib are literally the same fighters? Islam has a touch more bit of stand-up in his arsenal, but still, I think we'll get a lot of clarity and a lot of answers if and when Charles and Islam fight. That's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a like and subscribe. Comment on what your take was on those three big high-profile fights. Let me know what you want me to film next, whether it be vlog, skit, or podcast episode. Like I said, you could catch all my podcast episodes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you choose, whatever you like best. Be sure to go to get twice more content in the podcast world, in my podcast industry. Let me know if you want me to have more guests. I'm game for anything. It's your boy Hollywood AJ. Stay safe, stay healthy. Keep it 100. I'm out.